Welcome to the VT Show, a weekly online series featuring Vineyard artists sharing conversation, insight, and performance. Please welcome Douglas Abel and Sarah Stern.
Hello, I'm Doug Abel.
And I'm Sarah Stern.
And we are the artistic directors of the Vineyard Theater, and welcome. Welcome to the VT Show. The VT Show is one of the many ways we're staying connected with all of you during this crazy time and giving us a chance to revisit some of our favorite Vineyard shows and to hear from some of our favorite Vineyard artists. Let's talk about Is This a Room today. This past fall, we produced this wonderful show, conceived and directed by Tina Satter, and starring Emily Davis as a real-life young woman named Reality Winner. The play took place on June 3rd, 2017, the day FBI agents came to Reality Winner's home in Georgia to question her about leaking classified evidence of Russian interference in the US election. Is This a Room staged this encounter verbatim from the actual FBI transcript recorded that day. It was a wonderful show to be part of and to share with these great artists. And we are so delighted that it was recently nominated for many awards and honors this theatrical season. And in fact, this past weekend, our very own Emily Davis won Best Actress from the Lucille Lortel Awards for her brilliant performance in the show.
We are so thrilled to have Tina Satter and Emily Davis here with us today to talk about the creation of Is This a Room, and to be joined a bit into the conversation by Billie Winner-Davis, Reality Winner's mother. Billie is an activist who has been fighting for Reality's release from prison. Reality has been in jail since the day depicted in the play, and she'll be able to talk with us about what has happened to Reality since her arrest and how she's doing now and more. Before we jump into the conversation, we wanted to take a moment to share a brief clip with you from Is This a Room?
Reality. We obviously know a lot more than what we're telling you at this point. And I think you know a lot more than what you're telling us at this point. I don't want you to go down the wrong road. I think you need to stop and think about what you're saying and what you're doing. You know, I mean, I think it's an opportunity to maybe tell the truth. Because telling a lie to an FBI agent is not going to be the right thing, okay?
Please welcome Tina Satter and Emily Davis. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Very good. Go.
Where are you?
We're both in Bushwick, but not in the same apartment any longer. Yeah. We used to live together. Yeah, but we're each in our apartments in Bushwick.
Yeah, I've been here for the past little over a month. Yeah.
How are you doing?
Really good, all things considered. Good.
Yes, same. Lucky overall, and well.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, to jump in and give a little background, Tina, can you talk a little bit about the origin of Is This a Room and how you got interested in Reality Winner's story and what sparked in you to think about turning that into theater?
Yeah, I mean, it's very different content than I had ever engaged with in my past plays. Everything before this that I had directed, I had actually written myself. So it was a really big leap, and it came because of how interested in reality in this specific text I found myself. But this happened June 3rd, 2017, and there was a little bit of news about it at that point, in that around the time she was arrested, and I vaguely paid attention to it, but not seriously at all. I really couldn't have told someone who Reality Winner was if they'd asked. And then 6 months later, New York Magazine ran this article with this title, "America's Biggest Terrorist Has a Pikachu Bedspread." And December 2017, and I was just free reading on the internet. That headline caught my eye. It had pictures of Reality, and I was immediately, as I was reading this profile, like this young woman's really fascinating, and she did something really interesting, and I got really caught up in her just on that first read. And then that had a link to a hyperlink of, it said like, read about the day she was visited at our home by the FBI, and that took you online to the scanned PDF of the FBI transcript, like the word for word transcript had been leaked and was online at Politico. And as soon as I started reading that document, it felt like a play to me. It was just immediate. On the first way, it captured every stutter that everyone was speaking. It captured coughs. And having just read about reality, I was then seeing her in her own words. It was this really incredible half hour of like, and I just really, my artistic little brain started whirring on the first read. And also she looked in her pictures a bit like Emily Davis, who I'd worked with for 10 years and is an incredible actor. And I was like, maybe we could do something with this. And like right then emailed it to Emily and was like, read this. And do you know about this case? Maybe we could make a play, you would be her. And not having no idea, like it was a very like early idea. And that was the very first way I came to think of it theatrically, potentially, and then spent time there figuring out how it really could work.
Emily, what was your reaction when she called you and sent you that text when she sent you the transcript?
When Tina first sent me the article and the transcript, I was not familiar with reality at all. And I did Google her pretty much immediately, which I think is what we do most of the time, and didn't find much. And it was only after Tina and after I realized that she was from a certain part of Texas, that I started to get really interested in her story. She felt very familiar to me at that point, like this jolt of familiarity. And I think the first thing that we did was start experimenting with it and reading it out loud with some other friends of ours who were actors, because Tina was pretty insistent that there was something there that felt like the structure of a play to her. So I was excited and it was daunting. The transcript was a daunting piece of text.
And just to clarify, it was a transcript, not an audio. So
yeah, we have never heard the audio. I mean, it was like, it's an FBI administrative document. Truly, it was the record of the audio. The audio is the evidence, but and we've never heard the actual audio.
Is that liberating for you guys? I mean, in terms of your theatrical imaginations working on it?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so many people think we heard it, which I always am kind of secretly like proud of us for that, but it's just it's a funny thing. It's just taking an FBI administrative document and only using that to make word for word the play is kind of radical, but we went in a very old fashioned way, like that was, as Emily has said, like this canonical text. And that felt, I don't know if even freeing's over, but that felt the only way. Like that's the engagement, is with this on the page, and then how do we activate that with human beings saying it and moving.
I feel that if we had had an audio recording of it, then I would have felt beholden to a sort of impersonation of reality, which was never my intention. I really wanted more of the opportunity to have an interpretation of what I was given. And I knew that was not Tina's interest either in how we were going to start to conceive of this project. So that it was never about trying to emulate this young woman who I had never met and had never heard. That it was more, I think it allowed us to be more intuitive, or at least allowed me to be more intuitive in that way.
Tina, you mentioned it being a canonical text, which is interesting. And I was just curious, usually in a new play, as we know, the playwright is very present, sometimes quite a bit, and is consulted when the actors and director are finding discoveries in rehearsal and maybe changing a line here and there. What was it like to not have that? I mean, and to work with something that existing and real, and what was that experience like for you in rehearsal room?
Yeah, I mean, I think I went into it thinking we're gonna have to cut some of this, right? Like at the very beginning, we're like, and I have old versions where the X'd out sections were like, if we have to cut, this is where we'll cut, because it felt to me like the nature of an interrogation that it's like this cyclical pattern. They keep asking her a question, getting her to a certain point. For 3/4 of the play, she like gets out of that moment and they start again. It felt really challenging, despite all the rich stuff that felt inherently theatrical to me. It felt challenging. And so that was sort of just the work in the room. Because at first we went in thinking maybe we aren't beholden to all of this, but then once we were working out and figuring out, oh, something is holding in our approach, like moving it on the stage this way, the naturalism of the actors. This is kind of, this tension and this stuff is holding. We just kept working away, seeing if we could keep everything. And then we'd come to a section with a bunch of redactions and be like, oh no, but we'd work through it. So, it's hard to compare it a bit, but yeah, we were just so in the process, it became its own work to stick through it. And then we're able to retain all of it, which once we'd gotten there, we were like, now we have to make it work, like this. We can then say we're doing this transcript word for word, which just felt kind of important then too, in terms of showing the whole thing and not having had made big choices around what text was heard.
It seems also like you quite brilliantly in the process. You worked with silences and pauses and the actual coughs so effectively in the storytelling. Many people comment to me afterwards, they almost felt like they were at an undiscovered Pinter play in which what wasn't spoken was as important as what's spoken. Was that a real part of the process of just like listening, finding the silence?
I mean, I have to say that sort of space for that kind of thing because I'd written my own plays before and staged them, that really was sort of part of our practice, like something Ems and I would have been familiar with, giving that kind of space to like the rhythm of how, like sometimes I almost can shut my eyes when I'm directing, and if I can hear it, and I'm sure that other people have this, hear it, I know it's going well. I don't even have to see it sometimes. And so that, having spent that kind of time of engagement with text prior, I think really lent it to this, where it was rhythmically and emotionally the trajectory of the coughs were on the page, right? So we were taking, but how much space to put in is not on there are pauses actually denoted in there too, but yeah, it was just feeling again that all out in the room and that energy exchange. And yeah, I think it was something we were a bit familiar with playing with, sort of giving every single thing its own weight. And it's not just this realistic dialogue on top of each other, but it's the whole thing is a text that we make the world from. So.
And I think that so much of it was also that there was this line of tension that this pulse that we were trying to keep through the whole thing. But then Tina was from the outside kind of conducting where those little moments of breath would come, where I think reality could catch up with herself, or the FBI agents could catch up with themselves, or the audience could catch up with what was happening. And those felt like important like moments to suss out too. And that definitely took a lot of time figuring out. Yeah.
Well, it really felt like the audience was different from night to night. Some nights there were a lot of laughs. Every night people, I think, were sitting forward, and there was often a kind of thriller quality to it. Some nights were sort of pin drop silent. Given that you're working with such precision in terms of the text and the staging, Emily, did you feel like that the audience was affecting your performance each night, or that you had a kind of freedom to experiment within that structure?
I mean, of course, the audience. It would be so dishonest if I said I wasn't affected by the audience each night. It's live theater, But Tina gives notes every night, and so I think if in the beginning, in the first run of performances, if she could sense that there was a way that the audience reaction was influencing the show or the rhythm of the show, then she would give a note about it. I mean, there's not. It's like it became more of an athletic, more of she would. I guess you would always kind of say a basketball game, where we on stage, we knew what the goal was, and you can have a lot going on in the arena, but you have to just focus on consistency and making sure that you're hitting those marks, particularly the staging, because the lighting is so tied to every, really small movements and the sound design and the redactions. But I feel like the way that the audience was the most impactful was conversations with them afterwards would definitely carry through or influence the way I thought about going into the show for, another week or another couple of weeks. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Like, what kind of thing comes to mind that you would hear from people reaction wise that influenced you?
Just that I feel like I experienced afterwards that people were made to feel really uncomfortable by the show. They would often say to me that they felt really uncomfortable for me, and it was this like rigidity in their or that they couldn't like look at me. There was almost a way that they couldn't engage in conversation, or they would just be so I mean, I don't know if Tina, if you experienced this either, but I've just never had that kind of response after doing a show before, where I felt like where I could tell that that people were, I felt like breathing with me through that show, and sort of having like feeling the same release that I did, or relief that I did when it was over each night. Or completed each night, rather.
It was interesting, you know, often when you have any kind of show, you're gratified sometimes when you have a lively audience, and sometimes you're disappointed when you have a very quiet audience, and I felt the opposite of this play. I felt like when we had the quietest houses who were absorbed in the story, I knew that they were, all the audiences responded were deeply, deeply moved. And I remember standing with people outside every night, Emily, and they would look at you as you walked up the stairs to leave the theater with a sort of awe and happiness. I think they really felt you were the character, and they wanted to take care of you.
Well, I think that because there was so much humor, I think it's like, I had people tell me that they felt just when they were relaxing and getting into the sort of, because reality, even in her most quotidian parts of conversation, like she's very funny. So I think that people would get sort of side smacked with being surprised at what actually ends up happening in the show. And so that's what I mean. But there was like that was generally like what I felt like I could hear from people afterwards in the lobby of the show.
I just want to make mention, by the way, that we know a lot of people have questions for you, and we will be asking them of you towards the end of this piece. So stay tuned after we chat a little bit more.
You know, this play, as we near another presidential election, is still incredibly relevant in terms of Russian interference in our voting system. And as you know, you talked, Tina, about not necessarily having, you know, only heard for a moment about reality when this all actually unfolded in 2017, and then learning more about her as time went on. And I know that we heard from many audience members after the show who would leave and say, what's happened to her? I want to know, is she in jail now? What's happening? What's going on? And so much has happened with her, you know, since that time that's depicted in the show. So this might be a good moment to bring on Reality Winner's mother, Billie Winner-Davis, to join in the conversation and update us on some of that. Hi, Billie.
Billie.
Hi there. Hello, guys. Thank you for having me on. Thank you for allowing me to join you guys. I was backstage. I was listening. It was hard not to remember the first moment. Remember when I was getting ready to go in to see the play for the first time. It was a very difficult moment for us, and it was really emotional. It was well, anyway. But thank you for letting me join in, and I hope I can answer questions and come across as brilliant as you guys all sound.
We're so glad that you're here with us, and there's so much to talk about. But maybe we can start with the most current first. Can you give us an update on what is happening with Reality now and how she's doing?
Okay, oh my gosh, it's hard right now. She's probably going through one of the worst stretches because, you know, as each of us have been impacted by what our country's experiencing with the COVID-19, it is so bad for the people that are in prisons right now. They have been on complete lockdown since I think, I want to say the middle of March is when the prison system announced that they would go into restrictions. They've modified all programs, or I should say that they've gotten rid of all programs. They're basically locked in, which for her, this is an extremely difficult thing. for her to endure. Going through the last 3 years with her. And to me, I gasp when I remember that it's been actually almost 3 years now. We've been through some really tough times. When she was in the county facility, it was extremely difficult and painful because she was, very restricted to like one room with whatever females were in the jail at the time. And I remember that, they didn't want to take them outside for rec, and it was a very small rec yard and things like that. And we had to deal with this. And so progressing through what she's been through in the system, now she's in a federal prison in Fort Worth, Texas. And it's a better facility. It's a better system. She's had a lot of programs available to her. She actually was teaching yoga and spinning and fitness classes, and everything was going along really well. And then now this COVID thing came into our world, and now she's completely, locked in. They haven't been able to go outside for months. And she's just, their meals are restricted to where two of their meals are actually like their sack lunches. And so they're bologna sandwiches. And of course, if anybody knows Reality's a vegan. And she's not eating, which I know that's also impacting her emotionally. And so day to day, it's been very, very difficult. It's very difficult to kind of know what to say or how to react to her. She gets explosive at times. She's very down. She's very desperate. So I wish I had better news as far as, how she's doing right now, but it's not good. Her attorneys have filed for compassionate release with the courts, which that was turned down. Basically, the judge indicated that he didn't have the authority to do this because it was up to the BOP. But even if he did have the authority to do it, he wouldn't do it. He didn't feel like she was in a position where she should be granted a compassionate release. Didn't feel like she was at risk. And so that was, it was expected. I didn't expect that he was going to really take compassion on her, but it hurts, to read that, to read his ruling on that. So right now we're just waiting for the attorneys to file an appeal to his decision, which, it may or may not do anything, but we have to do something. I've always been, from the start of this, people see me out there advocating for her, doing things, because I can't do nothing. I have to do something, to try to make this better for her, to try to get her out, to try to free her. So, and that's what I do every single day with a small group of very strong supporters who have been with us from the beginning. We just try to do whatever we can to make a difference for her.
Wow. Well,
Can you take us back to that day, June 3rd, 2017, and what your experience was of that day?
Yeah. So June 3rd, 2017, my husband and I were getting ready to actually go next door to our neighbors, which was pretty much every other weekend thing that we would do. We would go next door, we'd have dinner, play dominoes, have laughs. And, we very much had a very stable, smooth, good life. My husband and I, between us, have 5 children. All of them are very successful, very bright and good kids, no trouble. Everybody was on their way to success, doing their thing. And my husband and I, we had a very good life, live out here in the country, do our own thing, and just happy. So that night, my husband got the call, and it was actually the FBI agent. I believe it was Agent Taylor that called my husband and let my husband know that, he was there at my daughter's home. He had Reality there next to him, and that they were taking her into custody. So Reality was actually able to talk to her dad for a little bit to let him know that things were going to be okay, but she just needed to let him know that, she was being taken in by the FBI. So we didn't know a whole lot that night, and it was, it was really, we didn't know how to react. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know what to think. So then she called a couple hours later after they had taken her in, after they had booked her in the jail, and she was settled in the jail. She got her phone call to us. And it was then when it started to really get real, where she had said that she was in jail and she needed us to go to Georgia to take care of her dog and her cat, to take care of her house, and to see what we could do, going forward. She said that there would be a hearing on that Monday, and then we would go forward from there to see, what would happen. So right away, we packed that night. We got on the road the next morning early, and we drove straight through to Georgia. And it took us about 17 or 18 hours to get there. And so we were exhausted. We got there early hours in the morning. And the next day we just started, figuring out what was going on. We found out that there was a hearing that was going to take place that Monday afternoon. And so we went to the hearing, and, they wouldn't release her that day. So they set up another bail hearing for later in the week. And so we just kind of went day by day, not knowing, what was going on. And we actually, even at that hearing, we really did not know what was happening with her. The information that we gave was very vague, indicated that she, was being accused of mishandling classified information. And so we still didn't know what that meant. So later that evening, I asked one of the reporters that had called me, what was happening. And he's the one that actually sent me the link to, the articles and the news reports and the government's release, the press release that the government did with regard to reality. It was then I found out that she was being accused of leaking the document with regard to the Russians' interference in our elections. And from there, it just changed our entire world. Our entire world had just been turned upside down and have changed dramatically since that time.
Billie, you mentioned this in brief when you first joined us, but I was curious. When you had the opportunity to see the show for the first time, I think that was maybe before the Vineyard. What was your impression of it? What was the experience like?
Well, I was terrified to go. We had been invited up to go to see the opening night, and it was there in New York at the Kitchen Theater. And I mean, Tina and I had reached out to Tina because a mutual friend saw that, somehow new information that she was developing a play based on the transcript of Reality's interrogation. And so I reached out to her to let her know that, hey, I heard that you were doing this. If you need anything from me, let me know. And we really didn't have a lot of communication. And so I really didn't know how this was being presented. And so as it got closer to opening night, I was contacted by a reporter there in New York that was covering it and had gone to some of the rehearsals and the practices. And so she contacted me and she, asked me, what I thought about the play. And I basically told her, I don't know anything about the play at this point. We're going to go next week. We're going to see it for the first time, but I hadn't had any real conversations with Tina about what she was working on, about how she was presenting this. And so, and I told the reporter that I was frightened. I was afraid of how this was going to come across because I was reading the transcript. At that point, I was reading the transcript like daily to try to desensitize myself, to try to get ready for this, to prepare myself, because this was going to be a version of my daughter there on this stage. And I didn't know how it was going to come across. And really for me, in just reading the transcript, I thought it came across as like a comedy. And so my worst fear was that this was going to come across as a comedy and some sort of a joke about my daughter. And so this reporter, after she had been through the rehearsals, she basically said, you don't have anything to worry about. And she said that from being there at the rehearsals, she said that if something had happened to her in her life, these are the people that she would want to tell her story. And so from there, I felt good going into it. I felt like this was going to be something really good, and that this was, being done in a very respectful way. And so we went to New York and we got ready for opening night. And I was just butterflies. I mean, I was so anxious the entire day and just leading up to that moment. And then of course, anybody who has seen the play, you see it and you go in and it's stressful. I mean, they created a very stressful set. And so it is very serious. There are some laughs in it just because of who my daughter is and how she's able to turn everything into a comedy and a joke at that moment, because that's who she has always been. But it is a very tense experience, and so it was super hard for my husband and I both to sit through there. And my other daughter was also present at that opening night. And I have to say, I know that the documentary crew was there and they filmed it. And so I'm sure that I cried through most of it. I'm positive that, I was crying through most of it, but I'm glad that I went. And I was actually then able to go this year in February to see it in Michigan at Ann Arbor. And that was a little bit better because at least I knew what to expect. I knew going in. And so I was able to, I guess, see it more for what it was, not so much of the emotions as it was the first time, but to actually experience it. And just, it was absolutely amazing. What Tina and the cast and crew did with this was just amazing. And I'm so grateful for them doing this. As people know, my daughter Reality was taken into custody that day on June 3rd, 2017. And she's been locked away ever since. She has not been seen or heard from. And so this play actually, it brought a version of Reality, like I said, to the stage. People are actually able to come in and to see a version of her and to meet this person for the first time, because nobody has seen or heard from Reality since she's been locked up. So.
Emily, I know that you had some correspondence with Reality, and I wonder, both Tina and Emily, meeting Billie, having that correspondence, how did that change your experience of the text and of the show from when you were working with it, just on your own before being in contact with them?
I was extremely nervous to meet Billie. And then as soon as I did, I felt we had a little brief chat beforehand, and we both seemed resolved that we were going to do the thing that we were there to do. Like she was going to sit in the audience and I was going to go do the play. And then my mom was also there, so there was this sweet Texas mom contingent. So I felt, that part of me felt it was that weird, intimidated, but also comforted. And my correspondence with Reality has been limited, but we did exchange letters last year when she was at a place where she had access to internet mail, which I don't believe she currently has. Is that right, Billie? Or
she does have access to some email, but it's very limited. She can only have 30 people on her contact list. And so it's difficult for her to juggle everybody who she wants to be on that contact list. And so she's limited in how many people she can have on her email.
we're starting to see questions from people who are watching this today and are writing in. So I just want to bring some of those into the conversation too. Gavin, who's on YouTube watching right now, is wondering, we know reality is aware of the show. What does she think about all this? What does she think about all this happening?
She is aware. She has had contact with Emily. I don't know if she's had contact with Tina, but of course, I have let her know, that the play was being developed, and of course, she was very excited for us to go to New York to go and see a play, and she, at times she's, because she's very witty. She says, "Oh, great, everybody's having fun there without me," and everybody's doing things about her without her. And there are times when she's afraid and she's kind of a little bitter, because she's still there in that dark place. But she's very, very grateful. She has shared with me the letters that she's gotten from people who have seen the play. And one time, she actually got a letter. I think the little boy's name was Adam. A 9-year-old had seen the play in New York and had taken the time to send her a letter and a picture of a robot that he did for her. And he, basically told her that his mom and dad took him to see the play, and that he was very happy, and he was sad for her situation, but that, he saw her, as a hero. And she wanted me to find out who it was and what his address was, so that she could also then send him a picture of a robot. And, and so she has had interaction, through the play, and she's very grateful. I think that she's surprised at the success of the play. The play has gone on to different states and countries, and the play, continues to run. And so that's really been something that she's very, very happy about. I'm going to ask another question because there's so much to talk about with it. Jennifer on Facebook, Tina, this is really, I think, for you. She wants to know about the choice to take the stage dark during the redactions. You talked earlier about getting to points in the transcript where information was redacted, and how you chose to deal with that. Can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, we really experimented around with what to do on those, because at a certain point you actually could we knew what some of that information was. So we even tried a version where you said, put it in an envelope and sent it to The Intercept, which is who she sent it to. But dramaturgically, we wanted to sort of stick to that experience almost that I had of reading the transcript that first time, and sort of what it means to come to blocked out text or information being withheld. Which just feels like a lot of what's even at play in the larger implications of what reality was involved with. So sort of just figuring out a way to treat that design-wise, we just experimented with, did just sound happen there? And really, a really dumb thing we would do in the rehearsal room ultimately was turn the lights out when we got to the redactions. And it was very dumb, but it was obviously really effective. It was like, there's something in that. So when we finally got into tech, we just, hours of minutia of finessing. Those are actually very sophisticated blackouts now happening, timed really with very subtle sound stuff. But to sort of dip the audience into that moment of when that gets withheld in the reading of the transcript, that again being the dramaturgical hold. And there is a build earlier in the play. They're a pink light, and it's there is a growth that's happening throughout the light treatment and sound of those. And it just also added some dynamics to something that, is fascinating sort of sentence by sentence as you're watching this very unknown thing that could go in any direction. But it's also one conversation that happened, and we wanted to try to figure out ways, since we wanted a stark and simple set, to frame it to give a little bit of expression and use some stage tricks to add that too. And so that was one place that felt tracked with the text to treat with blackouts.
It seemed also that for a lot of people in the audience, in an exciting way, at first they were a little perplexed by it, and then when they figured it out, it sort of created a wonderful exploratory dynamic to the show, and realizing, oh my God,
Yes, and then it just, I think, it does, like, I kind of already alluded to this, but there's something, there's so much happened to reality before this and then after, since, but it alludes to, like, what kind of information she could see, and it just reminds you that what we were not being told. I mean, there's just so much at work in that shift into darkness, and exactly as you, Doug, said, and slowly being like, oh, there is something someone decided we couldn't see or hear or read. Yeah.
I have another question for Billie, if you don't mind. Billie, one of the things we noticed every night after the show, after people came up to us in the lobby and asked us how Reality was doing, what was the latest with her, everyone wanted to know what happened to the animals. People were so touched and moved, and they were terribly upset about it. I had people offering to adopt the animals. Are they still alive? So I think you put a lot of people at ease if you could tell us their trajectory. And we also have some good news about the animals from a theater standpoint, too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Mina, actually, she went to go live with reality sister Brittany for a bit, but Brittany has so many cats, and so it wasn't a good mix because Mina is she's a very special cat, and she's spoiled rotten, and it didn't work out with all the other cats. So Brittany has a very good friend of hers there in Maryland who fell in love with Mina, and so she and her parents are actually fostering Mina for the time being. And so in reality, we send her pictures of Mina, and Mina's doing so well, and you can tell that she's being taken care of so well. And so Reality has almost come to the conclusion that she's probably going to leave Mina there with her new family. Yeah. So, because she says, it's a struggle for her. She talks about it, about, what's best for Mina at this point. And so, yeah. And then Mickey, the dog. Well, Mickey had a long story of, Mickey was from a very neglected background and was rescued by this agency there in Augusta, Georgia. And they couldn't find any homes for Mickey. And Reality was actually fostering Mickey for this agency. And it had been like the best fit ever. I actually ended up adopting a dog from one of the rescue agencies there in Augusta, Georgia myself, and working with the people that Reality had worked with. And Mickey was a very, very difficult case. And the work that Reality did with Mickey in the short time that she had her made it possible for Mickey to eventually be adopted. And the person who adopted Mickey actually sends me pictures on a regular basis. Her name is Brenda King. She's there in Augusta, Georgia. And Mickey is doing so fantastic right now. And so I'm able to also send Reality pictures, and Brenda sends Reality pictures of Mickey. And so it has been, it has worked out very, very good for both of the animals. So.
Well, that's definitely true for their stage versions too. Tina, you should give the news.
Yeah, excitingly, in among some of the very exciting awards the show's got nominated for, with the drama desks, it was so exciting to see for outstanding puppet design, and all I could think was Mina and Mickey. Someone saw them, and I felt really excited. I know this all probably is still a bit abstract to Reality, but I thought she might appreciate her pets getting called out and sort of one of the highest theater honors you could get.
But I don't think we could let the actual animals know because they may get swelled heads about it.
Yeah. And that was Amanda Villalobos who made those amazing puppets. So just to say,
Amazing.
And also a shout out to the company of actors who brought the animal to life.
Yes.
Yeah, they had an incredible company of actors. Billie, can you talk a little bit about what's next for Reality legally? We know that she was sentenced to around 5 years in prison. Can you talk about what's happening legally next?
So Reality took a plea deal and she agreed to do 63 months in prison. And after that, she has a 3-year supervised release term. Reality, basically, looking back, her plea deal was forced upon her. The fact that she was denied bail of any kind during the pretrial phase, really was something that was meant to break her down, because the environment that she was in was just, I mean, it was just horrific. You just imagine the worst of the worst. She's in a very small rural Georgia jail. The roof leaked the entire time she was there, right over her bunk. You know, I mean, she endured so much when she was in that jail. She was attacked by another prisoner. She was injured. She was, you know, she went without medical care. She went without adequate food. And so basically that was 15 months prior to, you know, pre-trial phase. And there was no reason for the government to keep her in jail. Reality wasn't a threat to her community. She wasn't a flight risk in any way, shape, or form. But they denied her bail to basically break her down so that she would accept this plea deal, because she just needed that piece of this story to end for her. Because if she hadn't accepted the plea deal, it would go on and on and on for as long as the government wanted to drag out the pre-trial phase. I've learned so much about our government and about our so-called justice system through this, you know, to really see that we just need so much work done on our criminal justice system. Our government basically has the upper hand at everything. You know, they did things to make this drag on. They did things to put this gag order in place so that nobody could even talk about this, so that reality story couldn't get bigger because nobody could talk about it. They had a gag order in effect for everybody who was involved in the case. Nobody was even allowed to talk about it. And so the story kind of, you know, died down, and they continued to punish her in silence and in darkness. And so reality took the plea deal. So she agreed to do 63 months, which is basically 5 years, 3 months. Her release date, her actual release date at this moment is, I believe, November 23rd, 2021. And so she has filed for a petition for clemency, to basically be released now. And only the President of the United States can basically do that for her, because she's a federal prisoner. And so we try to get his attention daily. We try to advocate for her release, because really, reality doesn't deserve to spend 5 years in prison. What she did was she released one classified document that did no harm to our nation. They, you know, charged her under the Espionage Act to make her look like a horrible person, and to make her look like she had done damage to national security when she hadn't done any damage to national security. The information that she released is already out there right now. It's been used by our intel. It's been used by our investigations as far as, you know, telling the public that the Russians had interfered in our elections. It didn't do any damage to our national security at all. She didn't work with any foreign countries or adversaries. She didn't sell any secrets. She didn't gain financially by this. She did this act anonymously. And so to keep her in prison for 5 years is really something that I can't live with. And I hope that the rest of America can't live with either. And that's why we really need to keep the volume up, and we need to demand that the president do something to undo this. He's the only one right now that can undo this. If he doesn't, you know, her release date is November 2021. I pray that at some point he sees this and that he acts on the clemency petition and he releases her. You know, and she will be under restrictions for the rest of her life. A lot of people are not aware that as part of her plea deal, reality cannot gain financially in any way, shape, or form from her case. So she will never be allowed to accept any sort of monetary payments if she goes out and tells her story, if she writes a book, if, through anything, through a movie. You know, there's a movie that is being produced about her story. Reality is not going to benefit from that because she's not allowed to by our government. They made sure to strip her of everything. She is being stripped of every everything that she could possibly gain from this. And that's not why she did it anyway. She didn't do this to become famous. She didn't do this to become rich. She did this act for a love of her country, so that her country would know that we are vulnerable. We are being attacked. We're no longer living in a free society if our election system is not safe. And that meant something to her at the age of 25. And it still means something to her. And so, and that's what I want people to know about her, she didn't do this to do any harm to her country. She didn't do this for the fame or any other reason. And she's not going to benefit from this. In fact, she's paying with her freedom every single day for this. But to her, this was something that was very important.
Billie, we know that a lot of people want to know what they can do for reality right now, what they might be able to do to help. I know Miriam, who's watching on Facebook, actually wrote in, "Can we send reality things?" Can you tell people what they might be able to do to join in your advocacy?
Yes, so you can go on standwithreality.org, and the address to send her letters or postcards or books is there. Books and magazines can only come from the publishers. They can't come from an individual. Those will be rejected. You have to be careful when you send her letters. The last time a card was just rejected that I sent her because it was in a yellow envelope. They change their rules all the time. They didn't, no colored paper, you can't send something with a sticker on it or, like an address label. You've got to make sure you write your return address with a pen or pencil. They do change the rules on us all the time. We're used to that now. That's our government. But yes, absolutely. You can write to her. You can send her books or, things through a publisher. You can't send her actual things. You can't do that. There is a way to put money on her commissary, but I can't ask for that. But I do thank all the people who do that for her. And really go on our website. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow us on Facebook. There's Facebook pages, and actually, there are ways that we ask that you can advocate for her, to write letters to your congressman, to actually write letters to the president, to ask for her release, just to keep her name out there. That's the most important thing. As I had said before, reality was locked away and silenced, and everyone involved in the case was put under a gag order. And so not a lot was out there about her. And what we try to do daily is we try to change that. The more people who are saying her name, the more people who are telling her story, that's what's going to make the difference for her.
Emily, someone has asked a question of you, and I want to make sure that we get a chance to ask it. Martha, who's watching on Facebook, wrote, "Emily's performance was one of the most wonderful performances we have ever seen. When we saw this play, at the end, Emily seemed to be immersed in the emotion of the entire story. How was Emily able to handle this emotion night after night?"
I talked to my fellow cast members, my ensemble, talked to Tina, and I used my breath.
Can I just say something? When we saw the play in Ann Arbor, afterwards, the cast and crew, everybody kind of met downstairs at the hotel later. And it was a couple hours later by the time that we all got back to the hotel. And I saw Emily, and it really struck me just how emotionally drained she was, how much she put into the performance. I could see she was still carrying that weight of being reality. And it made me appreciate what she does out there on that stage so much more, because I could feel just how much she gave. And not just her, but the other actors were there as well. And you could feel the exhaustion. You could feel that they had been through something very traumatic. And it brought it to me, like, how much they put into this. And I'm so grateful for that.
Well, thank you for saying that, Billie. I would remind everyone that there is, for all of that exhaustion, there's a lot of joy inherent in this process as well, and a lot of joy in knowing that you're doing something that's so meaningful to so many people. So that's a huge part of it too. Yeah.
And we know reality is carrying a great weight, and your family is carrying a great weight. And we so appreciate you being here with us today to share some of this with us, to share your story with us and Reality's story, and to update everyone who saw the show. We're so glad to know how to be able to do more and to be in this conversation with you.
Oh, I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thank you all. Tina,
Thanks so much.
Yeah,
thanks, guys.
Yeah, I missed you so much. It was really nice to all be here for a second.
I hope everyone stays safe and healthy during these crazy times. We'll all just keep thinking about reality.
Yes.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today in this virtual space. We hope you'll come back next week. We're going to have 3 amazing artists with us, Judy Kuhn, Mandy Gonzalez, and this is the first announcement of this, Anika Nani Rose will join us too. They're going to be revisiting the music of Laura Nero and the Vineyard's production of Eli's Comin'. So we're really looking forward to that. And we hope you'll join us. Thanks so much.
Thank you for tuning in to The VT Show, brought to you live every Tuesday at 5 p.m. If you would like to view previous episodes, you can find them on Facebook and YouTube. See you next week.